When it comes to culture responsive classroom, one thing I do like to consider is the income of the family because here in China, there is really a very small gap for middle class, while there is a big gap for high class. And there's a lot of low income families here in China. So there's really a very small group of middle when you got a lot of earners and a lot of low end earners. So naturally, this provides a different level of education for families depending on which school they attend. And even when they go into the school, the private schools here are very expensive. So a lot of parents will spend all the money they have to come to the school. So that doesn't necessarily leave a lot of room for additional activities, whereas the more wealthier kids will have a variety of after school classes, so like math, science, English, etc. And while the lower end kids do not have access to these because the family's earning power is limited. So when I create a lesson, I keep that in mind that some kids will be more advanced because they can afford more, while other kids are not as lucky because they are learning at the school's pace. They don't have extra money for extra classes. So when I design a lesson for English, I typically keep in mind that if I'm going to do a project, how much does it cost? Is it affordable? I don't want to feel I don't want to make kids feel excluded because the family doesn't earn as much, so they can't partake in some projects, which is sadly the case here in some of the schools I've been in, where you'll have 29 kids being able to afford the group while another five or three accidentally forgot it. So I tend to keep this in mind when I'm planning my lessons. Like if I'm going to do a project, I try to find the most affordable thing, something that I would spend money on in general, because I typically work on a teacher's salary, so naturally it isn't that much. So I want to get something affordable that every kid can do. So it's more or less practicing inclusion, and while also keeping in mind that okay, I will have some advanced learners. So how can I make the lesson more advanced for those so they don't get necessarily bored? While also keep in mind how can I help the lower end income families at the school, and how can I get them to catch up necessarily. Can, like, for example, I will provide extra materials to them so they can practice at home for free, make audio recordings, because sadly foreigners cost money here. So if you want to give a class, it literally is about $40 an hour minimum. But a teacher no experience, you want a teacher with experience, it can range anywhere from $100 to $150. Even some have been $300 per hour. So you can see there is definitely a very big gap in the teaching for outside classes. So me providing free material for the kids to practice at home is a way to help them catch up to their peers that necessarily can't afford all the extra teachers and the extra help. So this is how I'm trying to be culturally responsive in my classroom, is by providing materials that are affordable and also providing additional tutoring after school for free. So that is one way I'm trying to do is a culturally responsive classroom. Thank you, and I hope you have any questions I would love to answer.